Okay, this will be the last presentation. This will be on foliage plant maintenance, particularly as it relates to commercial property maintenance, and not necessarily as much for those of you who just might have a few houseplants at home. So this website is simply an explanation of what a foot candle is. In the United States, it's pretty much the only place that uses foot candles, although it is being used less and less, especially in commercial areas. But it boils down to the amount of light that one candle would produce in 1 square foot. So obviously, if you put 2 candles in a square foot, it gets more light, and 3 candles and 4 candles, etc., etc., etc. The website's here if you'd really like a lot more information about it, but that's what it boils down to. And what we don't recognize is that our indoor situations are not nearly as bright as we think they are. Plants need a lot more light, and tropical plants are used to somewhere around, a full sunny day is going to be around 10,000 foot candles. So you can see, even in a sunny south-facing window, that is only, at the most, 1,200 foot candles. So that's a huge reduction for these guys. Artificial lighting is highly variable. And, this is kind of continuation of the previous slide. You just have to keep in mind that what you think is a well-lit office is probably not as well-lit as you think it is. So you need to make sure that you match the species to your lighting. Remember, most of these plants are tropical rainforest plants. They're used to a higher light situation. That doesn't mean that you can't acclimate them and slowly get them used to far lower light situations. The number one problem with all houseplants: overwatering, and people don't know how to water. So if you're a business owner, you're going to have to train your employees to water them. You need the top several inches of soil, particularly in your larger pots, to dry out before you're watering again. The more light they get, the more photosynthesizing they're doing. The more photosynthesizing they're doing, the more water they're going to need. The less light they get, the less water they're going to need, which means the more chances you have to overwater them. This is pretty obvious. Higher light is faster growth. Faster growth is more water. As you're watering, keep in mind, where's the water going? I think we talked about this the last time. Where's the water going? How are you keeping the employees of that particular business safe when it comes to possible water on the floor? You want to thoroughly moisten the entire root ball and then walk away. You want to see just start to see the water running out the bottom, which might mean that you need to water and then stop watering until you see the water running out. Because if you water and you're still watering when the water is running out the bottom, a lot more water is going to keep running out the bottom. If you've got these large kind of in-ground containers, you're going to have to saturate just the root zone, not the entire container. Again, overwatering is the big thing. So this is what we really want to look at. Both of these pictures are of overwatered plants. You'll see the roots are not white. Roots should be white and solid. These are going to be soft and mushy. The plant on the left, that's classic overwatering signs, yellowing leaves. But as the leaves start drooping, a person might mistake that for underwatering and water the plant. If the plants are small enough, pop them out of the pot and see what the roots look like. If you have new people, give them a soil moisture meter. That will allow them to learn how to see when a soil is dry, how to feel when a soil is dry, but by utilizing something that can tell them that the soil, yes, the soil is dry, or nope, this soil does not need to be dry. The problem is, if you have very low fertility, if those plants have been in those pots for years, you haven't done any fertilizing, that will be a little less accurate than it would be if the fertility was appropriate for the plants. Smaller pots, this works great. Just put your finger in the soil. You can feel. Fingers are very sensitive. You can feel if the soil is too wet, too dry, got a little bit of water left. You can usually get down a couple of inches. Those of you with longer hands, bigger hands, longer fingers, you might get down 2.5 or 3 inches. Problem is, on large areas, large containers, it's not effective because you can still have a lot of water down at the base of the plant. But it's a way to start teaching your people how to see when the soil is dry and how to feel when the soil is dry. For your large containers, this is what you're going to want to get, a soil probe. You can see the holes in it, and what you want to do when you got the holes in it, just stick these probes into the media, pull them out, and take a look at the top 2 holes there. Right? If the top 2 slots are dry, you don't need to water. If more than 2 slots are dry, then you need to water. So it's pretty easy to deal with. We've talked about this before. Plants like different temperatures than we do. We tend to like it in the 68, 70, 72 range. But to keep your house plants from growing too fast, using too much water, and needing a lot more light, you'd like ideally to have the temperature to be on the cool side. But we don't want it too cold, because then they slow down to the point where we're easily going to overwater them, and you might run into cold damage. And that's exactly what this is. Most of your commercial properties are going to have doors that open. And when do they open? Is this a commercial business where you've got clients coming in and out all day long? Definitely probably don't want plants at the door there. But also, is this a kind of an office space where maybe everybody's coming in at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and then everybody's leaving again at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock? They're also leaving again for lunch. So again, you kind of have to keep in mind how often the door is going to open, how long that door is going to be open. For some of our very sensitive houseplants, less than 30 seconds below, not necessarily below 50 degrees, but definitely below 40 degrees, less than 30 seconds to a minute, and these plants can show extreme cold damage. If you have a data logger, in other words, a way to every hour, every couple of hours, record the temperatures near your plants, when the client says it's your fault that the plant didn't survive, you can prove that the temperature went too low for those plants to survive. Kind of covers your butt. This is another area where, like temperatures, plants really love humidity, especially tropical rainforest plants. People don't really like it when we open the doors to our houses and we get all sweaty and drippy inside the house or inside your office building. So we tend to like relatively low humidity. Our computers definitely like relatively low humidity. The problem is our houses in the wintertime and our commercial properties in the wintertime get really, really dry. Plants don't like that. The lower the humidity is, the more that plants are going to transpire, which means the more water they're going to need. So you really need to make sure that you're managing your employees and teaching them how to water appropriately. Some areas you're going to have a little bit higher humidity naturally. If you've got an area where there's a humidifier, that's right, the area right around there is going to be a little bit more humid. You can see indoor fountains, but how far away from those fountains are those plants? Is the humidity really getting to those plants? Are you misting periodically? That's a temporary solution, but it doesn't last but for a few minutes. Dusting is a huge thing in commercial settings because plants collect dust, and that's going to reduce the amount of photosynthesis. So you're going to have to consider whether or not you are going to simply physically dust them with a towel or a duster or something like that, or are you going to then apply some sort of chemical to clean things off and give the plants a bright shine. Why do you need to dust? Because otherwise you're going to reduce your photosynthesis. Are you going to clean the plants of the greenhouse gunk before you do the install, or are you going to do it after the install? It's just a question of when you're spending your manpower. If you're going to use a chemical cleaner, are you going to be utilizing it at install? Are you going to be doing these sorts of things afterwards? You're definitely going to want to cover furniture and floorings because sometimes these things do stain. You're also going to want to make sure that you test your plants because some plants, palms and dracaenas being notable, are very sensitive to the chemicals that are in them. Large plants are going to require pruning at some point. It does let more light through. It does increase the air circulation, which helps cut down on disease issues. So unlike the folks in this picture here, you're probably going to want to cover the floor. All of them are going to eventually need to be repotted. This is one of the things that we don't have to deal with when it comes to landscape plants. You can see the roots in this one are very, very pot bound. Are you going to upsize it to a new pot? Small plant might easily be upsized. A large plant, probably not going to easily be upsized. So you can literally take a machete and chop off 1/3 of these roots. Then you put new soil back in the pot, pop the plant back in the pot, and you're good to go as far as repotting and keeping the plant in the same size. Also, using a machete to chop off roots is kind of fun. Mulching is up to you. You're definitely going to need to check your fire code and check with your fire marshals before you bring a flammable source like wood chip mulch inside. But a lot of companies are doing that. There are also a lot of companies who are utilizing a living mulch, so using things like pothos or heartleaf philodendron as a living mulch to allow those plants to weave in and around so that you're not noticing containers and other unsightly things when it comes to an indoor planting bed. You're going to want to match your timing of fertilizer to your growth. Indoor plants have to have fertilizer. It's not something that you can just get away with never doing. We don't have the recycling of nutrients like we do outside. So whether you're doing a slow release, a liquid fertilizer, or any other type of fertilizer, it's going to be kind of up to you and your company. and maybe to the type of landscape that you're installing. So a place like an office building where plants are in an atrium or an entranceway, maybe a slow release or time release fertilizer might be fine, but in a place like a public mall where you're dealing with children and things like that, maybe having those little granular balls in the media is not going to be something that you want. So you really want to evaluate the situation that you're dealing with. The thing with fertilizers is they are salts. Salts are damaging to roots in high quantities. And anytime you have evaporation of water from the media, you can leave behind some of the chemicals that are in the fertilizers. You'll notice white crusts on your soil, on your pots. You might notice browning of leaf margins if things get really, really high. That's time to flush everything through, add a lot of water. You might also consider repotting your plants at that point too. In summary, you're going to have a lot of the same maintenance issues as you do as an outdoor situation, but you're going to have to take care of the watering on your own. You're going to need to train your people to water. You're going to have to do fertilizer management. It's much more important to do growth management here, and the timing is going to definitely be based on the situation that you're in. Can you go in while people are in the building, or are you going to have to do all of this maintenance work outside of business hours? As always, if you have questions, do not hesitate to get in touch.